Well, here we are. We're actually in church, and another storm is coming for all of you that are in Florida and enjoying the nice warm weather. And but look, Washington had 25 inches of snow. Yeah, so look, we got a little bit of snow. So what? Stayed in the house, looked outside. You slipped on the roads, made it all interesting, got the blood pressure up, got everything moving. That's good. It's a great blessing. We are in this series of taking a look at New Testament healing and seeing if there are some secrets inside of these healings. It makes you wonder why any kind of manuscripts would stick around for 2,200 years. What is it in there that we're supposed to know today? What is it? Well, today we're going to study, and write this down, Luke 8:40 through 56. And when you get home, since our thing is not to carry the Bible with us, we wouldn't want to get all religious. You can remember this, the 8th chapter. Actually, we're studying from the 8th chapter. Next week we'll go into the 9th chapter of the book of Luke, and seeing some of these secrets are marvelous and wonderful. Now, in this 8th chapter, towards the end, we have two distinct healings that take place here. Here are two distinct evidences of healing in the New Testament. First of all, let's see what these two healings have in common, because nothing is put in anything in manuscripts just for the heck of it. They had nothing to do. They sat down, they were watching television, they just had a beer, and now they want to write a little. No, that's not the way it is. They're there for some particular reason. First, there's the story of the daughter of Jairus. Now, Jairus was a ruler in the temple. Actually, he was probably some type of a theologian that worked within the temple structure. He was afraid, very fearful for his daughter. She was ill. We don't know with what. Sometimes they would call it a fever. Often in the Holy Lands, around in that area, pneumonia is quite a thing that they get because of the land and so on. But anyhow, it could have been that. And he was so afraid. Now, he had a good job, good paying job. Every Friday they gave him a check. He was interested in the temple and the temple worship. He was looked up to from the people around town. They liked him. He was a good guy, had a family. His wife was nice, you know, and she was nice and obedient, followed a little behind him when she walked. And everything was just hunky-dory with this man. Except his daughter became very ill. We have to remember in both the stories we're going to talk about today that medical science is so very primitive that what you have is something between minor surgery and herbology to witchcraft. Something in between there. That's what you were supposed to get well. You couldn't, if you needed a liver transplant, you couldn't go to the Baptist hospital. There was no such, you just died. That's all there was to it. It was all simple. You just died. And here she came down ill. It doesn't actually say so, but I am assuming that he had tried all the doctors in town. The chiropractors and the, all the rest of them. The MDs, the ODs, and the Mineys and all this kind of thing that they had tried. Nothing worked on this little child. And he became extremely fearful, and all of a sudden it didn't make any difference what he did for a living. It didn't make any difference whether the guys down at the temple would like him or not. He beat it to Jesus, who he figured if he had healed even one person, he could do something for the daughter. So here's a man who has got a made-up mind. And thus it's something that he has in common with the next character here. This woman has touched the hem of Jesus' robe in the same condition. She has a flux of blood. Now that simply means that she continued to menstruate all the time. And now there was more to it than this, because when a woman was in that period of her life, she could not be in public. She could not go outside the home. She was considered, what's the word? Unclean. So therefore, here she is, not only standing outside, but in the midst of all the men and the women who are crowding around Jesus Christ. Sometimes we have to get to the place where we're at our wit's end in order to get anything done. We've tried everything. Have you ever been there? I have. Tried everything. Tried everything under the sun. I understand this week that they have discovered a cure for diabetes. Marvelous, isn't it? It's by placing some genes in and so on, and it regrows, and in 5 years there will be a complete cure for diabetes, which is taking hundreds of thousands of lives, and so that simply means that we can eat ourselves to death and still be well.
No.
So as long as we have our own ideas and plans and hold on to them, even though they don't work, the definition of insanity. You do the same thing over and over, and if it doesn't, it'll work this time. You think this time it'll work. It doesn't. It doesn't work. So she's holding on to plans for a long time that don't work. And finally, she has gone to the last doctor. The last doctor has cashed his check. And she has walked out of the office. The nurse said goodbye. And she said, this is the end of this. Somehow, I have to get well. And none of this is helping me that I'm doing right now. Well, let's go on. Let's go back to Jairus, because he's interesting. This theologian in the temple. And his position is online as he comes to Jesus Christ. And the woman is a female, and not allowed not to touch the teacher. Both are going to break the systems of beliefs in order to be well. The systems of belief in order to be well. Both of these people have come to a point of contact. You know, years and years and years ago, Earl Robertson, and I had a lot of appreciation for him. Believe me, he was I had some contact with him. He was a very close to God man. He loved the people. He loved them, and often he would lay on hands so much. In one of his meetings, they had to carry him out. He was so exhausted. But anyhow, he coined a phrase: point of contact. A point of contact. What is that? Because we're seeing in these two people this thing in exactly what he said. A point where you have given up everything else and you have contacted the infinite presence. A point where your faith reaches out and takes hold of truth. And that's with a capital T, referring to God. Takes hold at that point. Both had probably spent everything they had on the doctors, but the doctors couldn't help. They were about to discover a higher power than physical medicine that existed at that time. They were about to get in touch with their perfection. They had none. What did they have to lose? So what if the guys didn't like it they were standing around? Who cared whether they pushed against Christ Jesus? Who cared? What did they have to lose? Nothing. Nothing to lose whatsoever. Now notice here that Jairus is much like the centurion that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, or before the big snow of 10. You know, somewhere way back there in ancient history, we talked about the centurion who came to Jesus on behalf of his much beloved servant. He loved him.